Now, this is really cool, everybody. One, first of all, we have a great friend of the show back on. Will Hessert's here again, the Renaissance man, the entrepreneur, now turning into a content creator himself. And hear this, everybody. Will's wife is just about to be in labor. You just spoke to the doctor, and they said any hour now, projecting 8 hours in the next 8 hours, right?
Yeah, so we went to an 8:40 appointment this morning, and the doctor's like, yeah, like 8 to 10 hours, you'll be in active labor. So I'm like constantly like checking, like, is anyone calling me? Is anyone calling me? So this might be a super short podcast, but
Hey, this is a rare time where that's totally okay, man. And thank you for taking the time for doing this as you wait for the birth of your second child. And yeah, again, if Will has to go, we obviously know why, but we're prepared for all things, and hopefully this can be a nice distraction for him until the big night news. So by the time this airs, so we're recording on Wednesday as it airs on Thursday the 4th, you'll likely have a new child. How does that make you feel, Will?
I'm kind of nervous. So because it was kind of like unexpected. I'm like, all right, what do I do when I'm having this first child? And now there's a second one. Like our toddler, like got out of her bed, walked into our room like 3 times last night, which is already kind of annoying. Like Joe's trying to sleep. What happens when there's a newborn in that room that you are now waking up when you come into mom and dad's room? So we'll see. I imagine, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the logistics of having 2 kids, and I guess we'll just figure it out. But yeah, a little nervous, but excited.
Yeah, well, of course, if anyone could pull it off, it's you. Well, we all know you're definitely a great father and inspiration as always. And man, this is really exciting. Congratulations to you and your wife. And wow, this is cool. We're gonna have footage for the rest of time exactly where you were right before the birth of your second child. And when YouTube is merged with some other company, and it's gonna be AR YouTube at that point, will go look at she'll look back at this and say, hey, this was the moment right before I was born, right?
She'll watch it in the metaverse or whatever that is.
Yeah, dude. This is really exciting, man. And we'll keep you as a nice distraction until the big news. So thank you for joining us again, man. We're so happy at Will Hessert, one of my favorites, man. How are you doing otherwise besides another big life, on the verge of another big life moment?
Oh yeah, so I guess outside of that groundbreaking thing, so Javon and I started a company that's focused on carbon capture technology, which is essentially reversing climate change. You take CO2 out of the atmosphere and you sequester it safely in the ground or in useful products. And Elon Musk went to the X Prize Foundation and said, all right, here's $100 million, and do a 4-year competition on whoever can make the best technology. So we entered that competition, and kind of the first leg of it is 15 teams. Whoever's the top 15 teams at this time, they all get $1 million. No equity, no taxes, nothing. It's just, here's a grant.
Look at that.
That would be helpful. So we're kind of sprinting towards that. The deadline for the submission on that is February 1st. And not only do you need like a 15-page technical proposal, but you also need a working prototype. So we're kind of scrambling for that while I'm about to have another child, while other things going on. So I think I'm exhausted. Like, if I really just have to, like, I just turned 25 on Monday.
Well, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. And I just, like, the way I hear people talk on their 50th birthday, I'm like, I get that. It's like, is this my life? Like, I don't want to die at 50. Like, geez. But
we don't want that either.
A lot of caffeine. So these next 90 days are kind of going to be interesting. Like 16-hour days sprinting towards this massive deadline, but also having a newborn. So we'll see. It'll be good, I'm sure.
I'm sure of that too. Again, well, I could compliment you all day, but with your hard work ethic and your drive, you just are a part of a breed that figures it out. And lots of respect to you for that. And we could go back to the hundreds of thorough entrepreneurs who raised a family while creating a great thing for this world. Steve Jobs, he had I mean, yours isn't illegitimate, but he had that.
Thank God. If I threw an illegitimate child on top of the legitimate ones, like, you gotta pay
surprise
money. You gotta deal with baby mama drama. Like your baby mama's fighting with your what? And like, no.
Yeah, exactly. But bottom line is, you got the juice to figure it all out and proving you're an ultimate multitasker, and hitting on that. And how do you feel? What do you think is your secret to being an ultimate multitasker like this, handling your career, your family, and all your other endeavors? How do you pull it off?
I mean, my first statement is going to be very controversial. Marry the right woman. Like, that is a huge factor, or the right man, or the right. If I offend someone, I don't actually give a shit. They can grow up. It's a matter of, because if you have a partner in that, and you're raising a family, you need to make sure before you commit to something like marriage, which legally speaking is the most significant thing you can do other than dying. And especially as a guy, marrying a woman, like, you got to look at how a lot of these divorce settlements end up going. So you really need to be careful in terms of, is the person that I'm marrying, do they share my vision, support my vision? They don't necessarily need to be doing the work with you. Sorry, I think I just lost you there for half a second because the bank is calling me. Not my wife, though, so we're good. But they don't need to be doing the work with you necessarily, but they need to be understanding that you're doing the work that you're doing. So that's probably the first. The second is, for me, so I think there are some people who can genuinely just like work 18 hours a day and they're just wired that way, and good for them, man. For me, the way I look at it is, if I was going into the gym and you told me like 8 years ago, you got to deadlift 4 plates, I'd be like, but you can build up to that over time. So for most people, like, if you're trying to run a business, well, have a 9-to-5 job and then work on something on the side for an hour a day. Awesome. You've now gone from 40 hours a week to like 45. Now try to up that. And you can turn yourself into someone who can work 70, 80 hours a week fairly consistently. But if you're not able to do it like right away, just don't beat yourself up about it. It's a muscle and you have to work it out. There are obviously people who are born entrepreneurial Olympians, but it's one of the few areas where, unlike in athletics, even if you're not, like, there's no reality in which I play professional sports. There's just no way that I could ever do that.
Yeah, not even the most mundane. You can't make the curling team, Will?
No, dude, I couldn't. No curling, no cricket. Definitely no rugby. That is not mundane.
Those are most vicious injuries.
But, oh, dude, it's like, hey, what if we did football, but without the safety equipment? Actually, there are less serious injuries from it, though, ironically. But yeah, so make sure you have the right partner, work up to the work ethic, and most importantly, know why you're doing it. Because, like, if you're just going to work hard to get a Lambo, like, there's no car that's worth. If you have started a business so that you can be rich and you haven't gone into significant debt to do so, I highly recommend you shut your business down and you just go get a job. It's just not. It's horrible. It's one of the worst things you'll ever do. So you need to have something that's actually worth the pain. Like, having a newborn sucks, but you get a kid out of it that gets to grow, like these big eyes.
Yeah.
So the pain is, at least in my opinion, worth it. So, a business is, you will almost be as attached to it as a child. It's pretty close. You pick your kids over the business, but it's up there. So you need to make sure that you know why you're doing whatever you're doing. And these people who work like 100 hours a week just to make money, I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, you're wasting a life, even the leisurely things. And for those, I think I've noticed, I feel like there was a time, even maybe 5 years ago, they really encourage you to work as much as you can. And then people realize, yeah, that's not healthy for your brain and that's not healthy for your body. And you're wound up not performing the best because you're tired. You can't move. There's a reason why that, of course, don't be lazy with it, but we really need rest and relaxation, even as humans, because how can we focus and develop new ideas if we're just so gung-ho on going in one direction? It's not possible.
Yeah. I mean, like SpaceX and Tesla, they have a culture of like 70, 80 hours a week, go, go, go. But people work there like for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
There are very few people who work there forever. I mean, Elon is just, he's an interesting character in his rarity. I mean, like, just reading about like the different routines of billionaires, like most of them are like, I sleep 9 hours a night. Like I don't make an important decision until 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And then Elon's just like, yeah, I'm up at 7. I chug black coffee and then I go to the rocket factory and work there until like 10 p.m. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ. Like,
yeah, okay. It literally built different Elon Musk.
I mean, he's now the richest guy on the planet. He is, as of yesterday, one Bill Gates more than Jeff Bezos. So, like, what?
Suck it. Speaking of that, while we're on topic of Elon Musk, he had a viral tweet earlier in the week. Mind if I get the exact tweet 1 second? But regarding world hunger, as people said,
that was a tweet.
Yeah, if in fact, what do you mind explaining to us what exactly he was talking about? I can read the exact tweet, but when it comes, Will, tell us what was up with Elon Musk? Why did he go viral earlier in this week?
I watched this unfold on Twitter, like the original dude's tweet popped up, and then I saw like Elon replied, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy went there. So there's a criticism levied against Elon Musk where essentially 2% of his net worth could be used to end world hunger, which is asinine.
Yeah, that's pretty bold. He can't just write a check out for people who's assuming that, right?
Well, even it's also not a matter of money necessarily. I mean, you can send food aid to a country that has a corrupt dictator that's holding back food supplies to keep the population in check. Like they're
like, this is mine now.
Yeah. And, say you feed a bunch of people. Great. What do they do next month? There is greater complexity in solving these issues. So the UN, or at least a director in the UN, had been pushing that, 2% of his net worth. So Elon said, like, let's pretend my net worth is 300 billion, which it was less than that. 2% of that is $6 billion. If you can provide me a plan to end world hunger for $6 billion, I will sell $6 billion worth of Tesla stock immediately, and I will give you the money.
Yeah.
But the accounting has to be open source, and we have to know where the money is going. Mm-hmm. And here's where it got insane. Mm-hmm. He then also asks, by the way, what was up with this? And shares an article about UN aid workers demanding sex from refugees that they were feeding to actually get their food. Some of them as young as 9.
God damn.
And I was curious because I wanted to look into this. So first off, the UN's food program has a budget over $8 billion every single year. That's weird because there's still world hunger. But
yeah,
within the program, there have been thousands of complaints of child sexual abuse.
Oh, that's so
with
awful.
no accountability. And this is why you have freaking QAnon groups being like, there are pedophiles run the world. Like,
yeah, you're not helping the cause with you hear these reports.
I mean, maybe Bill Clinton shouldn't get on a plane with a guy who has a child sex island 26 times. Maybe that doesn't, like, I'm not saying QAnon conspiracies are true. I firmly believe China did not invade Maine. I'm like super convinced that did not happen.
Yeah, studies show.
But, you know, often with conspiracies, like if you look into 9/11, some 9/11 conspiracies go wild. They're like, aliens did it. I'm like,
yeah,
you couldn't see the windows on the plane. Like, I don't know, my dad was 5 blocks away. He saw the windows in the plane, bro. It's just when a plane is moving quick, it can be difficult to perceive.
Exactly. It doesn't happen too often. And, you know,
exactly.
You could go all day with it.
When the government removes entire sections of the 9/11 report. And what probably happened is that there were officials in the Saudi government that funded the 9/11 terrorist attacks through Al-Qaeda, and the US government was hiding it because our relationship with Saudi Arabia is what allows the US dollar to remain supreme, which is a whole complex thing. But the fact that you're covering up that one part, now you have people who are like, it was aliens.
Exactly. You make a strong point when it comes to the conspiracy theorists. Now, I'm somebody who generally, even in the most ridiculous realms, I'm willing to hear people out. Of course, I have my opinions and I have my logic, but I'm willing to hear how people come up with point A to point B, their method of what they're thinking. And yes, when you have things that are clearly manipulated, documents change, people's opinions. Okay, I understand now footage can be manipulative, and now with the rise of deep fake media, you could really make anybody seem or sound or do anything. But I'm not that I'm supporting or, giving credit to a conspiracy theorist with the most ridiculous theories. But when you have this genuine information out there, clearly manipulated and changed, you could understand why people come up with the most ridiculous things,
Yeah. I mean, like people saying like Sandy Hook was fake. I find that particularly interesting. Is like, especially people that, if there's anyone that we know that says that, I'm like, it was like 25 minutes up the road.
Exactly. I remember that day right at school. It was a Friday right before Christmas in the time. And yeah, we all probably where we grew up in Fairfield County, Connecticut, Newtown, the next county over. We most likely knew somebody, or at least knew somebody who was sadly affected by it. And yeah, it's crazy that when people come up with that, I don't think people would sacrifice a child to help a political agenda. That's my opinion. That's why I don't.
Oh no, people do that all the time. It's called drone strikes. We do it all day, every day.
Yes, in that version, but I'm saying domestically.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, but I was in a class where that was actually in effect, because I won't name names because it was a pretty intense experience. But the teacher's class I was in, it was her husband's birthday that day, and he was a paramedic in Newtown and was the first one to arrive on scene. So like whatever horrific, unbelievable gore and horror was in that elementary school, like he was the first one in on his birthday.
He sadly saw it himself.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to see what a reaction of someone who saw that themselves would say to it being fake. But then you also have to look at, well, why are people willing to believe this? Well, sometimes it's genuinely untreated mental illness is what leads to conspiracy theories. But sometimes it's because we have, like there was a study done by Harvard and the CIA jointly. To quote Thomas Sowell, anytime something terrible happens in the world, there was always a man from Harvard somehow involved. So there was a study done to test what huge embarrassment does to people. So I believe the study was, and I'm probably getting a little bit of the details of the study off, but that they would have subjects express like their deepest insecurities and like things that they're embarrassed about, and then to a therapist who would then take them into another room. There's a large crowd of people, read these things to the people, and the people would laugh at them repeatedly for sessions.
Oh my God. One of
the subjects.
Study.
The Unabomber was one of the subjects.
Mm.
So the CIA and Harvard helped make the Unabomber. The man who kept sending bombs to universities.
Yep. And he was on the run for 17 years. When I worked at CNN, I worked on a documentary on the Unabomber. I know a lot of random things about him. Yeah.
You probably know more about him than me, but that's the part that always gets left out. So CIA doing experiments, and now boom, you got a guy mailing bombs to places that represented the embarrassment. So I guess we have our answer on what huge repeated embarrassment does. At least he seemed like a psychopathic narcissist, but I guess if you take a psychopathic narcissist and then hit them with extreme embarrassment, violence
is creating a monster.
Welcome. Yeah.
Like if you've seen Joker, Joaquin Phoenix's version of it, that's exactly what happened. Reckon it's fiction, but still.
Haven't seen, and I am upset that I haven't. It's difficult to see movies when you're married because you have to watch a movie. I got to see 2 movies this weekend though that are not up my wife's alley, so I'm blessed. I got to see Dune and the new James Bond, and I love both to death.
I was gonna ask, what did you think? Did you did you see these in theaters or?
Yeah.
Okay, I heard Dune is the place to see in theaters.
Yeah. I mean, both times, and I would say James Bond as well. And I love that Hans Zimmer did the music for both. I'm like, my guy, where do you get this time? But the Dune soundtrack was Dune was just, because I thought it was the best looking sci-fi film I ever saw, but I kind of kept that to myself because it felt like a hyperbole. And I saw all these reviews that were like, this is the best looking sci-fi film of all time. Like, oh, thank God, I'm not just
it was really hyped. And they said that this book was unadaptable. They tried in the 80s and it looks like an 80s sci-fi joke. But, the great mind of Denis Villeneuve, and you combine that with huge A-listers, your Timothy Chalamet's and Dana, and look what you could pull off. And I heard nothing but great things, and I heard you have to see it in theaters. That's the thing. Reckon it's available on HBO.
One of the best directors, I think, of our time.
1000%.
Sicario and Arrival are also 2 of my favorites, and
Blade
this
Runner
is a crime because I'm a giant sci-fi fan, but I still have managed to not see Blade Runner 2049, which is...
Oh, come on, Will.
I know. Sometimes I look in the mirror in the morning when I wake up. It's like, today's going to be a good day. And then my subconscious is like, bro, you still haven't seen Blade Runner 2049. I'm like, you're right. I'm a piece of shit. I'll go back to bed.
Another theater watch you must do to justify the, the spectacular filmmaking production details.
Are you naming one?
Oh, I was saying with Blade 2049, you have to watch it in the theaters to have it justified what you're checking out. Any of his, and even if he's a great genre hopper. From Sicario, this hardcore thriller, drug cartel, to Dune, proven, adapting this complex sci-fi written novel into what seems to be a masterpiece at the moment. Then he did Prisoners, which is just a cute, crazy whodunit mystery. As you said, Arrival, this really another great sci-fi, but very simple and talking about communications and stuff like that. And Denis Villeneuve is turning into a real household name.
Because while the genres are so different, from like Who Kidnapped My Daughter to What Do These Aliens Want to Let's Go These Cartels to questions about replicants to the year 10,000, and there's a debate between great houses and the Universal Imperium. Like, very different, but it's always a journey of the soul. And I mean, Dune was obviously setting up for a much longer series of movies, but Dune is a very complex world. But like, it was obvious that was starting the journey of this boy who's, you know, thrust with all this responsibility and like a messianic role. Sicario is following the journey of a woman realizing how little she's able to actually change the injustices around her. Arrival in this journey of accepting whether or not the future is deterministic. Like, it's always this deep psychological journey. And the one thing that's always the same about the movies is it's always like quiet and kind of self-reflective, and then holy shit, people are shooting each other on the border. And calm again. So it's just this calm, introspective explosion. Whoa, calm, introspective. So it's like old Christopher Nolan, Michael Bay, old Christopher Nolan, old Christopher Nolan, you know? And it's, I love his movies. He's up there and some of my all-time faves. Up there with Nolan, Tarantino. For me, he's young too. He's like 40.
Yeah. He just started his career, like you said, later in the game. And I mean, he really is. He's also Canadian, fun fact, you know, so shouts to Canada. They're probably thrilled to have their special auteur filmmaker. And yeah, well, actually here it says he's 54, but he started in his 40s.
I thought he was 40. Oh, he looks good.
Hey.
Good job, Dennis. You're doing great. That skincare, man, you're killing it. Well, like 54 for a director, like, isn't crazy, because it takes so long to even get into that arena.
Ridley Scott's first movie was Alien, and he was 40 when that started, and now he's working in his late 80s. So it shows you.
I will not rewatch any of the Aliens until I'm done having kids, because watching a kid like kind of pop their head out, and I'm like, no, stop. I'm gonna kill my wife. Stop it.
But yeah, like you said, this guy is going to be fascinating as an auteur to look at now, especially he just killed it in the 2010s. And bottom line, there are relatable characters in these very entertaining but complex settings that he creates. And we saw now it's official that Dune Part 2 will come out in 2023. So they'll probably focus all the time on that. That was just greenlit earlier in the week. And yeah, man, it's just awesome. People worried about where the film industry was going to go during the pandemic. Well, we see theaters are just fine. They're in a good spot. Sure, you'll have more options with streaming services, but bottom line, content creation will always key. And when we're focused on filmmaking, people still love their stories. And you just prove how great it is. That I assume, was that your first time back in a theater since the pandemic started?
It was, yeah.
See?
I think that was a big worry. It was also just that movies were also really starting to suck. Was a big issue. And I think, I mean, some of it was, and look, full disclosure, there is nothing wrong with a movie being led by female protagonists. Like, not at all. It's kind of obvious. They were stoking the flames for the next 007 to be a female in the most recent movie. And I have no problems with it. But can you just like make a James Bond film with a woman lead and not change anything about it? Like, well, no, because that doesn't make any sense. James Bond is the ultimate male fantasy. You have to. So they like took like, let's take the Oceans trilogy and like, let's just do it, but like with women. And it's like, it was okay, you know, but it's like,
that's not the point.
You have to bring something original on top of the fact that you're doing it with women.
Keyword, original.
It can't just be, look, we brought women. Like, no, and it almost does a disservice to the inclusivity sure,
Yeah.
that you're trying to create by making the movies that exist to further that not great. I mean,
exactly. You're proving the point that Hollywood's just recycling old ideas. And even if you're trying to make it woke, well, there's a reason why sequels don't in general work out. We've seen it before. There's nothing new added to it. You're just changing people's names, in this case, gender characters, and you are doing a disservice. There's so many talented female leads out there, and they should have their own story to adapt. You can't do James Bond and make it Jane Bond. You have to create a whole new spy. Have it not really connected to James Bond. Don't do Austin Powers either. You just do your own, like the Tomb Raider series, for instance. Like, that's a completely original idea that, they didn't have to remake or change. I mean, the movie's okay, but,
But Lara Croft is a badass.
Exactly.
Like, and Tomb Raider could be very well done if they wanted to remake it. But there was actually a big criticism toward the new trilogy of Star Wars that people were like, well, people don't like it because it features a strong female lead. Like, timeout. No. Number one, it's not a strong female lead. This character doesn't make any sense. If the fact that I feel bad for ever giving the prequels shit, given that they would have never, ever used a line in the prequels. Somehow, Palpatine returned. I have not finished the ninth movie. It's just, 8 was so bad. And I was like, I will maybe start to give 9 a chance. And like a few minutes in, I'm like, I was watching it during the day. And like, I'm not a big fan of day drinking. And that's the only way I'd be able to get through it. But like Rogue One, a Disney Star Wars movie, female lead, kick-ass movie.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Like, Jane Erso was a great character. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Was it perfect? No. I had obviously planned to do some things that they ended up cutting out. Like, what is your relationship with Saw Gerrera? And like, it seemed like they had to cut some stuff out for time that removed some parts of the plot. But I will still watch that over and over again because it rocks with a female lead.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do with that. And I feel, and it's funny because you can actually see this because it's the day after Election Day, after a big Democratic upset in Virginia. It seems like
and soon New Jersey
don't
too
go the way people want, it's almost always, well, it was sexism, it was racism, it was this, it was that, it was this, it was that. And it's like, guys, or maybe you're the problem. Maybe we don't hate that you have a strong female lead in Star Wars. Maybe you're just a terrible writer. You know?
Yeah, that's key. Well, key. You can't get mad at the film. You got to be mad at the filmmaker. And that's who ultimately decides. That's why, as I get older and being within the production industry, it somewhat makes sense when projects are critically panned. You see a set where a director's not trying. You see a set where things are chaotic. People aren't putting emphasis on the leads. That's why they say a great director can make a shitty script into a great movie, but you can't make a shitty script into, you can't make a, sorry, let me try that again. A great director can make a shitty script into a good movie. A bad director can fuck up a great script and take it to a bad movie. It's right there. You have the blueprint. If you do it this way, this will be a good movie. Well, people fake it. People try to improvise. People try to put this, that, and the other. They use the budget incorrectly. It's all right there. And that's why the great writing will always stick out. But it's the integrity that will change it once and for all. So hence, as to bring this all back, when people were mad at Star Wars, you can't just, especially the prequel trilogies, which were pretty much just the original trilogy with new characters. I think that was the biggest flaw. They weren't a big original ideas. Shit on the prequels are bad movies, but at least they were somewhat different. See the what I like to call now the Vilquel, how we saw Anakin Skywalker be created, and we're seeing a lot of those movies now. Joker, Better Call Saul. I like
thought
the villain.
Revenge of the Sith was a good movie.
It really was.
I'll
It
fight
was.
on that hill. It's
I
interesting
have the higher
watching
ground.
the internal struggle. Maybe I'm just distracted by the fact that, number one, the greatest lightsaber fights of all time. Number two,
Yeah, right.
John Williams went hard.
Mm-hmm.
And number three, the meme potential. Like,
yeah, that's how do you market a movie now? Meme potential. You have to consider that.
Every time like a political extremist on any side says something absolutely like insane without any kind of nuance, I just think of Obi-Wan going, only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
Oh man, you made a great point too. The best lightsaber battles were in the prequel trilogy. I mean, the final
Anakin
one
versus Obi-Wan.
the best
Holy shit.
that
Dude.
was as hype as you could get, and none of the original trilogy or the second trilogy justified that. That was just, you just felt right there. This is good versus evil one time, and we know what happened. He just, he gave him enough time to be saved. But that's the point. As a hero, he can't necessarily kill, but he won't do a mercy kill like that. And then you have Darth Vader.
Yeah. The New Hope Obi-Wan versus Vader.
Oh my god, they did not. It shows they didn't know what the potential they had, dude.
It looks like because they're like older now, they're struggling to get their lightsaber up.
Always one of my favorite jokes is the fact that it is a prequel, and yet the technology somehow got worse as time went by, and then they got good again.
Since the Empire came, the quality of life in the galaxy has really gone down. Remember when we were all able to do backflips? And I haven't seen one person do a flip in over 10 years. We got to support this rebellion. Maybe they'll bring back the technology. But then they tried to add technology, and they're like, well, Greedo's going to shoot first. I'm like, no.
Han shot first.
Han shot first. But this is an issue of when you're dealing with like Disney and all these, because Disney, you have to make sure everything is child friendly. Now, will they work with the organization in China that is committing genocide against the Uyghurs to help get their Mulan movie done? Of course. But what's genocide? Who cares? When's the last time a Uyghur went to Disney World? Fuck them. But the kids, we got to get them there. And the amount of money I have to spend because my daughter is obsessed with Minnie Mouse. It's like, man, this is a racket and it works. I hate them, but I also want to not make my daughter's life miserable. And here's where you have to compromise values in order to be a parent. But yeah, fuck Disney. But, an organization founded by an insane anti-Semite might not grow into the thing that we all want it to be.
Yeah, where's Twitter trying to cancel Walt Disney? This is a perfect target on who to cancel, but they don't want to admit. Well, I love Disney World. Even though this was created by a monster, technically, I mean, in the sense of his, like you said, anti-Semite, racist, that's considered a monster. Yeah, he created this whole world. It's essentially built on a lie, but hey,
dude, we should cancel Henry Ford. Like Ford Motors should be canceled by that logic. He handed out pamphlets during World War I about how the war was a Jewish conspiracy. Like that's, him and Hitler probably would have like really gotten along in the 20s and 30s. Very similar opinions.
Yeah, it shows that we're selective in cancel culture because Disney is perfect. We know most of that woke crowd probably loves Disney. Disney Plus is their life. Yet we're denying it. So hey, what are you gonna do? Like I had this guest on, huge Disney fan, and she said very controversial things in the what could be considered controversial to a certain group, right? And respecting her opinions and stuff. But yet, she calls out for woke culture all the time, but I know she's the biggest Disney freak in the world. And I would love to have a genuine conversation, say, listen, guest, you say all these things, but you're a huge Disney fan. And I'd just like to know, what would you think? Because Walt Disney, there's much evidence to show that he didn't have the same values the woke culture tries to promote and stuff. He wasn't inclusive. He was a socialite. He was, again, repeat again, he was proven to be racist and anti-Semitic. Do you think Walt Disney should be canceled? They'll likely say no, but I don't know. I'd have to ask the question and hear that. And whether we use it for content or not, like, I would still have that conversation without the mics. So I understand her point of view. It just fascinates me because that's contradicting, the message you're trying to spread. And, well,
it's not a morally consistent philosophy. It can't be. And that's why it is unable to dominate politically. So it seems like it is. And it seems like wokeism is the majority opinion, but it really isn't. And this is provable.
They just have the loudest voice.
Democrats support the most popular policies in the United States, right? Like paid family leave, 70% of Americans support it. Like Medicare for all, it's like above 70%. Like all of these policies, student loan forgiveness. However, I think that they think wokeness is this major popular thing, and they keep pushing it and they keep pushing it. And people hate it because, as it turns out, is calling everyone who disagrees with you a racist an effective means of communicating in a democracy? No. Now, there's this illusion that it's the majority, but that's because corporate America is adopting it, because BlackRock, the $10 trillion shadow bank that manages more assets that's like a third of US GDP, I'm pretty sure. And they have something called an ESG score, and other parts of Wall Street have adopted it. But BlackRock has been destroying the housing market, and they're the largest. So specifically, fuck them. But fuck all of their friends too. They have this ESG score that's essentially a wokeness quotient that you can assign to different businesses that affects whether or not your company gets an investment. So if you're a public-facing company, you have to pretend to be woke in order to keep your stock price up. And every CEO and every board of directors, not board of directors, but CEOs, vice presidents are all compensated based on quarterly, at the most, sometimes even monthly, stock performance. So their focus is keep the price up, which means if we have to look woke, we'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah, you don't want to upset the wrong people.
Yeah, like, Twitter, I'm going to take Donald Trump off the platform. Now, is the Taliban still on Twitter?
Yep.
Like, look, say whatever you want about Donald Trump. The Taliban are worse. There is no sane person. Like, unless you just spend your life watching Rachel Maddow and you haven't been outside in 2 years because Fauci told you not to, unless you're that really sad person, first off, God help your soul, I feel so terrible for you. Unless you're that person, you understand that the people who kill girls for going to school are worse than Donald Trump. And it's so morally inconsistent, but it's morally inconsistent because it doesn't actually reflect the values of the institutions. They're just having to do it because Wall Street's imposing it. And that's a question I haven't answered as to why. Like, why does BlackRock give a shit? Why do all of these old white men in Wall Street care about the inclusivity of the Black and trans communities? I don't think they actually care. So I don't know what their end.
It just helps their image, ultimately.
But nobody knows that they're pushing it. Like, how many people know that like, I mean, that's why Stephen Colbert isn't funny anymore, because he works for
CBS.
NBC. He has to abide by, dude, Colbert Report was one of the funniest shows ever.
Yep. And he went network. Major network, I should say.
Letterman was funny.
Yeah, they just didn't care at that point. Like Letterman wouldn't work out in this new culture.
Well, because I think they're almost terrified. Like, if I say the wrong thing, Trump will get reelected. Like, no, the fact that you're no longer funny and you're now a state propagandist, essentially, is why if Trump wins in 2024, he will probably win. He just probably will. And if Trump doesn't win, the only reason why Trump would not be the president in 2024 is if he lost the primary, which is actually a good shot. But if he doesn't win, Ron DeSantis will win. So then Ron DeSantis
boy.
Which I know is going to make a lot of people upset. And I'm not saying whether or not these are things I want to happen, but you keep alienating the country outside of the Democratic base. But here's the thing. The Republican base is 30% of the country. The Democratic base is 30% of the country. These 40% of people decide who's in power. And if you alienate them and only talk to your base, I mean, and that's why Trump lost, is because he's very alienating.
And he just rubs people the wrong way the most in the biggest sphere, especially. And we can talk about that all day. Excuse me, but
well, that's what happens when you're whatever he is. I have a friend whose family member owns a construction company who did work on one of the Trump projects, and then the Trump or one of his companies or whatever did the math and were like, hey, it's actually cheaper for us to not pay you and fight whatever legal battles you throw at us and wait for you to go out of business than it is for us to pay you. So we're just going to do that. And they put this whole guy's company out of business. So yeah, like fucking ruthless. I mean, there might be some credibility issues with this, but there are beliefs that Epstein was saying when he was captured. He was like, look, no matter what, I'm safe. It's either the New York Attorney General is arresting me, and it's so that I can spill dirt on Trump, which I have dirt on Trump, or it's that it's the federal government and it's Trump who wants me to spill dirt on Clinton, and I can spill dirt on Clinton. So the fact that he has dirt on both, I mean, no one can look at Bill Clinton or Donald Trump and be like, these are good people that definitely have never had sex with a 15-year-old. Like, can anyone really say that? But the CIA is going to kill me.
It's fun. Yeah, I mean, when you bring that up and you bring how this has all unfolded and just the biggest letdown of the American politician since George H.W. Walker Bush left and lost the election to Bill Clinton, it has created a whole, even though this world has advanced technologically, this world has advanced, in other ways in a good, positive manner. And I really believe that. But bringing this all back, this is how corrupted, fucked up politicians have become with the rise of technology and people showcasing their opinions and proven evidence. It just shows their bluff. I mean, Will, imagine if we had the access to the information and what we could learn about the government during like the Nixon administration or JFK. Like, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but the Ken Burns documentary, the Vietnam War, and they have these old tapes of Nixon just, bringing down his talks with Harry Kissinger, pretty much saying, damn, we're fucked in this Vietnam still while I'm trying to get elected. And then him saying like, all right, we pretty much need to have the Vietnam War last until my second term, and then I will end it my second term right before Watergate. Pretty much, strategizing like that and just showing the hypocrisy. It just shows this is all as a result of growing technology communications. Like, how else do you feel about that? What do you want to add to that?
Well, first off, I'll just say the Nixon tapes, some of them are hysterical. I mean,
he's a funny person.
He's a weird guy. He went on this long rant about how homosexuals hate women
Huh.
and how they're destroying women by becoming fashion designers and giving these women these terrible clothes
I did
to
not
make them
know that he
ugly.
had that. Oh my.
And just like listening to it, like it's so,
This is the president.
I mean, it's not only obviously incredibly homophobic and just really messed up, but it's also a really weird stance. Like,
Yeah.
homophobic, hate women, prove it. Fashion designers. It's
Oh.
like, what? You're in charge. He also tried to nuke North Korea. And yeah, I forget who called it off, but he was wasted while North Korea shot down a spy plane. He pushed the red button, and it might have been Kissinger. I don't remember who, but he called the Joint Chiefs like, don't. He's drunk. Let it go.
Yeah.
We're not nuking.
Kissinger. He's still
I mean,
alive, by the way.
Nixon's still alive? No, Kissinger is.
Kissinger is. Yeah, he's like 94.
Yeah. Oh, he's old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very, very controversial figure. I remember in the 2016 Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton's like, I'm proud to call Henry Kissinger my friend. And Bernie said, like, I'm proud to say that he's never been my friend. And like crowds are cheering for both. I'm like, oh, but the reason why we're having these conversations is why the government wants to censor the internet. And there is a concern of misinformation. But like this whole Facebook insider coming forward, it's been proven she's being funded by groups. There's this billionaire, I forget his name, but he spent all of his life being a libertarian, but then he saw Trump get elected and he just convinced himself it is Facebook's fault that Donald Trump was elected. And they're just coming up with these lies to justify controlling speech. I mean, how many people in America still believe Russia through Facebook elected Donald Trump, even though there is no evidence that is true? It has been disproven. And the reason they didn't impeach him for it is because there's no fucking evidence. And you can't actually impeach a sitting president because MSNBC said something. Like, that's just not enough evidence. Even a CNN anchor, I think it was Van Jones, but I forget, but one of them got caught on camera saying, oh, the Russia story, that's a big nothing story. So they want to control the narrative, but then people on the internet, look at CNN's engagement on Twitter. No one gives a shit what they have to say. No one cares. Look at their views. They get like 100,000 views. There are YouTubers that would kill themselves if they got 100,000 views on their least popular video. And look at the demographics. It's all people who are old people who don't know how to use the internet. 100,000 of them at a time. The only successful person on cable news right now, arguably Chris Cuomo, who's right now going through a whole sexual harassment scandal because apparently Cuomos don't know how to just not touch women. And his brother doesn't know how to not kill old people. And then you have Tucker Carlson, who just says crazy shit all day long. And he's like, I'm just asking the questions that the elites want to. Like, I hate the elites too, bro. But what the fuck are you saying? Like,
then compare that to Barstool and they're just doing pizza reviews and showing someone fucked up. Dude, and
Dave Portnoy is more respected in the United States of America than Chris Cuomo or Tucker Carlson or Joy Reid or Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper or Sanjay Gupta, because all of these fucking people lie all day long. They are obviously insincere in what they are saying. They are obviously pushing partisan agendas. And Dave Portnoy has his beliefs and he expresses them, but he's also like, fuck you, I'm rich, whatever. I'm just going to go back to having sex with models. And like, people keep releasing sex tapes with him. And he's like,
he gets away with it. That's fascinating, right? It's happened like a solid 3 or 4 times, but it's not a problem. I mean, you'll have the woke crowd like, fuck this guy having consensual sex and stuff like that.
It's so weird to me. And then people are like, by the way, free Cosby. I'm like, wait.
And also another thing, well, all those cable personalities are all backed by a major conglomerate too. So there you go too.
Yep. Well, it's all the same people. I mean, there are only 5 major media companies and they have all decided on woke corporatist woke Democrat beliefs, with an exception of the Fox network. But now, look, I express a lot of anger at the woke corporatist Democrat establishment because they have become one of the most evil institutions in the world. But before Democrats get their pitchfork, they're letting out Fox. Fox has been that on the other side of the aisle for longer. So I just don't have as much energy to hate them because they've been evil since I was a child. So I just it's just Fox is evil. Like, and the sun, it rises and sets. Like, I don't know. But CNN just used to be bad, at least from what I could tell. But looking back at the things they've lying about things, I mean, the Iraq War fucking comes to mind. But and you'll see a lot of CIA, FBI agents leave the agencies and then go to work for the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC. And it's the intelligence organizations trying to control the American consciousness. But it doesn't work because nobody fucking watches these people. And we rather watch Dave Portnoy. And I don't know if you've seen Breaking Points with Crystal and Sagar, but they have, dude, best news show ever. They're purely on YouTube. They're completely independent.
Breaking Points.
Yeah. So Crystal is a very, very progressive, Bernie supporting, and she former congressional candidate. And Sagar is conservative, but also grew up as an immigrant in Texas, who's
really
the kind of color that you don't want to be in 9/11, like 9/11, post 9/11 America in Texas. So very unique experiences, but they are brought together by their hatred of bullshit from establishments, even though one's very conservative and one's very liberal. And their show is remarkable. They started it less than a year ago, and they're at like 700,000 subscribers.
Yeah, I see it right now. Pretty legit following. And I see they also have the podcast as well. So, always love to support the fellow podcasters. Look at that. It shows that, like, I like people, they say the media creates these narratives, and people like to create a narrative that conservatives and liberals cannot be in the same place without getting personal. But it seems, again, I still have to watch it, but it seems from here, what you're explaining, that this is an example of, people can coexist. As like one thing we're talking about manipulation with CNN, and I still love CNN. I was a former intern there. I just want to make that clear. But the Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan and Sanjay Gupta interview, 3-hour podcast, and I think it was a fair debate. But the way it was cut up by CNN, in fairness, it made Joe Rogan look really bad, and more just emphasizing the negative points that would create an outrage, just trying to create clickbait and stuff. But if you took the time to listen to the podcast, you wouldn't think that these two, you wouldn't know for a fact that these two didn't hate each other. There wasn't going to be a big, fight between them. It was cut up. It's just natural. You just cut up to make things to prove your point. But the full conversation was a very civil one. Of course, they didn't agree, but, I think, again, it was a good podcast with great points on both sides. But again, CNN made him look bad.
To go on Don Lemon afterwards?
I did not see it, but I heard it got ugly. He
was like berating and emasculating Sanjay Gupta and was like, we did not lie. Like, yes, you fucking did. Mm-hmm. This is why the debate is so stupid. Ivermectin, in some obscure studies in foreign nations, has shown to help treat COVID-19. Attempts to replicate those studies have not been successful, so what it seems like is that ivermectin is not effective in treating COVID-19. However, is it horse dewormer? No, you stupid fucks. It's an anti-parasitic drug. It is a required drug to be taken for most immigrants to enter the United States of America. Mm-hmm. If it is horse dewormer, then I have a lot of questions as to why we're force-feeding horse dewormer to Afghan refugees. Or maybe it's a real drug. When your dog is anxious, what the fuck do you think they give the dog? They give the dog Xanax. If someone has an anxiety disorder and they are prescribed anxiety medication from their doctor and they get Xanax, are they getting dog anxiety medicine? Is ibuprofen a cow painkiller? Are you people high? You know that mammals have like almost the same biology? Because 3 freaking people out of the 330 million that live in this country walked into a veterinary clinic and literally took horse dewormer. You know what that's called? That's called natural selection. They die off ideally before they reproduce because those are the dumbest people that exist. But it is such a small portion of people. And then the media is running fake stories like that this Oklahoma hospital is overrun with people who have been taking ivermectin. And the source that the Rolling Stone had was someone who worked there, but never confirmed if he actually worked there, which he hadn't in years. These people, because people are like, why do you hate journalists so much? I'm like, I don't. But whatever these people are, I fucking hate them.
Yeah.
But there are real journalists. They're just rare. I mean, like looking at what happened to the Washington Post since Bezos bought it, like democracy dies in darkness used to be like a warning. Now it's their goal. Like the mission statement. Like what's happening? Oh, but he's also
all that money, man. All that money really shows that it changes people. It's ridiculous amounts of money too in all aspects of life.
Yeah. I mean, look at how much money Amazon makes by running like the Pentagon and many other of these programs run off of AWS. And AWS is the most profitable part of Amazon. Like Amazon, the website barely makes money. Like it is slim margins. AWS, they're hosting prints money. Like just so that is a very profitable deal. And then you'll see since Bezos bought it, the Post very pro intelligence agencies and like there's no deep state. Like what the fuck do you mean there's no deep state? You mean intelligence operatives aren't operating against the interests of the American people? Have you ever read anything? MK Ultra, like there's so many things that are going on.
Proof is in the pudding. But hey,
it
just shows you everybody really has a price. You know, I've talked about this before. I've talked about this subject before. I like the WWE wrestling. Me and Ryan do shows on it. And I think they're a perfect example of how really money really influences their audience and stuff. They're a very specific audience. They lie to their fans all the time. They create all these things to mesh up, yet people still come to them no matter what. I mean, the Saudi Arabia. Yeah, they know that they're lying. And you talk about Saudi Arabia doing blood money shows twice a year. And they take and risk and stuff. I mean, it just shows that, hey, we have all the stupid amounts of money and no one's going to challenge us. But now they do have a new wrestling called All Elite Pro Wrestling that now they're dividing between that audience. But bottom line, I bring this up because they just know you're going to go to us no matter what. While we get richer and richer with more influential, bow down to us. And some people are fine with it, and some people just want to have a conversation on why we do it. And that's why, these conversations you and I have and beyond are so valuable. We're not saying we hate this. We're not trying to influence people negatively. We just want to talk about the things that have been pointed out throughout, time is that.
It's important to know how much of everything is a lie. Like, did you see the Tiki Torch protest in Virginia?
No, what happened? Was this yesterday after their big win? So if anyone,
no, this was a few days before.
Okay,
so
but leading up to this very big election of the new governor,
dude. And it's crazy because Biden won that state by 10 points, and they just flipped to red.
Yep.
But they had 5. Tiki Torch protesters who like to emulate the Charlottesville event. And then people were looking at the individual protesters, and he came out in support of Youngkin.
Yes, and just
he
before
was
whoever the new governor, Republican Glenn Youngkin will be the next governor of Virginia. And as people project, this is bad for the Democrats, especially going into the midterms next year. But you were saying,
oh, they're gonna get fucking slaughtered, and they're gonna lose the House.
Yeah.
And so if they pass whatever they need to pass now, they won't. And I think the Republicans have freaking Manchin and Sinema on payroll at this point. Actually, Sinema is getting paid $75,000 per speech to interests that are not very pro-Democrat. So they're probably going to either flip parties or collect their money because it's all bullshit.
And New Jersey's going red too. Looks like
white supremacist protesters. What initially threw me off is that one of the white supremacists was black, and I'm like, well, this feels like a Dave Chappelle skit, but I'll give this a
talk about irony.
They identified all of them, Democratic Party agents. It was totally fake.
They're trying to make him look bad, huh?
Fucking Lincoln Project. The Republicans who stood up against Trump, who now just seem to fight against other Republicans to get Democrats elected because they have to do something with their donor money. Because it's all a grift. They came out and said it was us and blah, 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 blah. Almost like ISIS. Like anytime like there's a car crash in the Middle East, like some ISIS guy is like, this was for the jihad. And I'm like, bro, like, was it actually you? But
the hypocrisy, man. And they just tried to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like an example of people trying to, again, remember we were talking about deep fake, people trying to manipulate you, make someone sound like they're doing something. Obviously, they're taking it a step further in real life. Okay, if we make it look like that these conservatives are this crazy, even though it's us as liberals, then obviously they'll have more liberal support. But it seems it's awkwardly backfired, and now Virginia is a red state. And looks like another one, the other significant change in governor looks like at this moment that there's going to be a new governor in New Jersey. They're going to go red. Jack Ciattarelli defeating Phil Murphy.
I think they just called it blue, but it was
really?
tight.
It was close. Like, yeah, really close.
Well, they thought they had Virginia in the bag, and not only did they lose Virginia, they almost lost New Jersey. I mean, and
that'd be a great big one, especially after Jersey. I mean, Jersey's very blue, and okay, I'm looking at this updated 9 minutes ago from the New York Times. It's been 88% reported, so it looks like they're still going to have, they're still going to be counting votes, and by the time this airs tomorrow, Thursday, there'll be a decision. But at this moment, Jack Ciattarelli is leading 49.64% to Phil Murphy's 49.61%. But regardless, we don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's very, very close. And this is just examples of the changes that are possibly coming. And I guess my other question here, Will, in the most broad sense, why do you think these big changes are happening once and for all? Are people, these two big states, fed up with, a liberal agenda? Does they just think it's time for something to change? Or do you think, it's deeper than that? Well, I'm just curious. What do you think on the broad sense of these changes?
It's interesting because if you look, I'm not even sure if I want to call anti-Democrat because the Democrats of old, like the non-neoliberal Bill Clinton Democrats, the non-woke Democrats, the actual I'm pro-labor Democrats would dominate. There has never been such a pro-labor sentiment in the United States of America. Did you know that there's a massive UAW strike going on right now for better wages across John Deere? It's like one of the biggest strikes ever.
Did hear about that on a whole world standpoint too. Yeah.
Because major media outlets, which are, let's be honest, MSNBC is a DNC propaganda network. Is the DNC talking about this massive organization that is demanding better wages and then coming out and saying, all right, we need to give them paid family leave, we need to do Medicare for all, and these incredibly popular policies that honestly, at this point in an industrialized nation, makes sense. But no, they're coming out and they're fighting. And I think this is the game. This is my guess. They're going to fight. Because why would you fight over critical race theory in schools? Like, at the end of the day, like, isn't giving people healthcare and like fixing homelessness probably just a little more higher of a priority? But no, they're like, we're going to fight in these trenches. And they're so rigid in these culture wars that, like,
letting other things.
Because here's where the debate gets stupid. Particularly, like, critical race theory came into a big play in this election, so I'll address it quickly. The notion that you should not teach slavery is asinine. And anyone saying that is either a racist, like genuine racist, not just they disagree with me, or they're just dumb. Like, it's important to teach that. Japanese internment camps, the treatment of Chinese immigrants in the United States while they're building railroads, the frickin' Trail of Tears. These are horrible, horrible things that happen. Now, it's important to also learn global history to learn that, are these things normal in human history? Unfortunately, yes, with an exception of American slavery. That was probably the second worst slavery ever to occur. The first worst being the slavery happening at the exact same time in South America and the Caribbean, also part of the Atlantic slave trade, but in the Spanish and Portuguese colonies. While reading about American slavery keeps me up at night, that those stories make me physically ill, like the horrors that went on. But it's important to look, these things were common in human history, and America did them, but also worse, while upholding these truths that completely contradict our own actions. And it's important to look at that, to especially make sure that we don't repeat those things. Like, history isn't naturally progress. At the same time, I am not convinced that teaching young white children that they are inherently evil, or teaching young kids of color that they are inherently victims, is helpful. Here's where it gets a little more complex. Teaching children that there can be barriers that exist if you are a person of color rather than a white person, that's a reasonable perspective. But this conversation seems to only have these absolute extremes of, don't teach slavery in my school, to teach a little white child that they're an oppressor. And like, hold on.
Yeah, we're not about making these labels for kids who are fundamentally not aware. They'll just go over their head. And it's important, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, but we need to just simply do it from X and O's. This is what happened. I'm not going to put an opinion while on it, but these are the facts. And America is a very dark history. There's still a lot of making up to do. And who knows if we'll get it in our lifetime or many generations ahead. But we need it, like I agree with you, we need to teach it that way, based on pure facts and not putting your opinion on it. And guess what? We could say the same thing about cable news today or any news outlet.
Yep.
So,
but what would really help families of color now? Healthcare.
Yes.
Workers' rights.
Yes.
Paid family leave.
Yes.
Because who is disproportionately affected by a lack of benefits? People of lower income. Who is disproportionately at a lower income because of decades and decades and decades and centuries of genuine racist institutional policies? People of color. So if you provide things that help give people a leg up, like, these things aren't even that particularly expensive. And Medicare is actually weirdly super efficient in its delivery mechanism. I was surprised researching that only because Bernie came out and said only 2% of the top 1%, no, only 2% of the of Medicare's budget is spent on overhead and delivery. He was wrong. 1.4, like even less than what he said.
Exactly. My man was just trying to win the election, the game. Oh man.
I mean, the DNC can't have that. We can't have someone who actually wants change. So I think the Democratic Party fights these culture war battles so that they don't actually have to do anything for the people. And also, just to be fair, on the other side, Republicans fight culture war battles because if they weren't, they'd actually have to come up with a cohesive policy, which is, other than bomb Iraq, there really hasn't been a lot of policies coming out. Sorry. Now the new one is bomb Iran. And I'm like, maybe we should just look, if they cheat on the nuclear deal, we're going to have to go to war with Iran. But there's no evidence that they've done that. So maybe, will they? Probably. But you can't put someone in jail for a crime they haven't committed yet. Like, we can't pre-crime bomb Iran. Like, that's so morally abhorrent. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people like, well, why can't they have a nuclear weapon? Like, look, no country gets a nuclear weapon if their supreme leader says that their purpose on this planet is to destroy Israel, like to kill everyone in it. That person cannot have a nuclear weapon. There would actively be a nuclear war that would kill more people than all the wars in history. So, and who do you have right next door? Well, you have Pakistan right next to Iran, who's nuclear power, right next to their mortal enemies, India, who has massive tensions with China. The number of nuclear powers all connected in a region. Iran needs to not get a nuke. There's a reason China and Russia also came to the table to be like, no, you don't get a nuke, because literally no one on the planet wants these crazy ass people, who, by the way, aren't the Iranian people. The Iranian people are fans of Jon Stewart. Like, they're very, very
have Jon Stewart Western. Talk to them.
Yeah, the government of Iran is insane. But dude, that was probably in 20 years, we will either call the Iran deal under the Obama administration the greatest success or greatest failure of his presidency. But we will, because it's definitely not going to be Obamacare, because that
it's been a battle for everyone there. And you go back for the Iran-Contra affair with Reagan. It's been it's fascinating how it's still this is what your new child's going into, Will. This is the world they're going into.
At least she's going to grow up in a world where she can watch Fargo, which is a fantastic movie. That is so good.
Yeah, the show's great too. Fargo. Oh man, the Coen brothers, man. You know, they actually broke up. Well, I think amicably though. Yeah. Joel Coen sticking to film. Ethan Coen is going to theater, and Joel Coen has the big beard and stuff. His new movie, The Tragedy of Macbeth, is coming out this year. It's an A24 film, black and white. Ooh. Macbeth is going to be played by Denzel Washington, and Lady Macbeth is going to be played by Frances McDermott.
Denzel just gets better with every movie. He's just a tremendous actor. I don't think he comes up enough when we talk about amazing actors. Like, Denzel Washington is
everything an actor should strive for.
And his perspective on life is actually really, really beautiful. Like, it's like all about gratitude. And he has a very, it's funny. It's like him and Keanu Reeves, like they play these guys that just like massacre large numbers of people. But then, like,
just love
them talk, and they're just like the nicest people.
Yeah, it's
like, you're a good actor, because you're definitely not this guy in real life.
You know, it's funny. There's those few actors that people on the most extreme sides can come together. You know what? Denzel is a perfect actor. We have a Denzel poster here.
He deserves a poster.
He just embodies what a great actor and a great human being is. Like you said, the gratitude. He truly transforms into his roles. Like, I'm not watching like, oh, this is just Denzel being himself, like a Ryan Reynolds. He actually, whether you're Malcolm X, whether you're a slave in glory, whether you're an asshole in Training Day, a corrupt cop, the list goes on and on and on. He's just
equalizer.
Yeah, he's the equalizer. And then here's when I know
pilot.
Yeah, the drug pilot in Flight. I know, especially that an actor has their chops when they do theater, and he's a great theater actor too. I've only seen little clips, but of course, it'll be hard to get, in there. I believe he may. I know he done. Let me see this Shakespeare. I think he did Macbeth on the stage. I know he did. He killed it some. I want to say he did some. Um. Okay, he played Julius Caesar. I knew it was a
Ooh.
Shakespeare one. He played Julius Caesar back in he actually played Brutus in 2015.
Ooh, I would love to see that. Was a really fascinating Shakespeare adaptation?
10 Things I
Coriolanus.
Hate About You.
No, that is fascinating. No, so
Which one?
Coriolanus. So Ralph Fiennes was Coriolanus, and then Gerard Butler was in it. But it was like modern war, but the exact Shakespearean, and it was like strong Apocalypse Now vibes in it.
Okay.
And it like Apocalypse Now meets Shakespeare with Ralph Fiennes and Gerard Butler.
I'm with that.
It's weird, but I find it super cool. I feel like most people would not enjoy it. I love that movie, but also most people wouldn't enjoy Apocalypse Now, which I think is one of the best movies ever.
Hell yeah, one of the best adaptions too from Heart of Darkness. That was a perfect transition. The original book takes place not in the Vietnam War, but was it which one was?
Like Heart of Darkness?
Yeah,
it's
Heart
like
of Darkness.
African colonization.
Yeah, and then transfer that to the Vietnam War, and you have a masterpiece. And if you ever want a good, if you have 90 minutes to kill, I don't know if you've ever seen Heart of Darkness, which is a documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now. It's a crazy. Martin Sheen had a heart attack on stage. They went crazy over a budget. Their sets were destroyed by natural disasters. They had to shoot in the Philippines because this is right at the end of they shot right a few years after the Vietnam War ended and couldn't exactly film on location. They went to the Philippines.
Can we send in a bunch of helicopters? Why? We're gonna remake the movie. We're gonna make a movie about when we killed those millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it'll be, dude. The Vietnamese had fought for so long. They fought the Japanese, and then they had to fight the French, and then each other, and then the Americans. And that wasn't the incident, by the way. China started making incursions and they ended up fighting Pol Pot. So here's Ho Chi Minh, this communist dictator, fighting Pol Pot, this other communist dictator. But I'm not saying Ho Chi Minh was a good guy, but he was a much better guy than Pol Pot. Pol Pot is one of the worst mass murderers in human history. Not to say Ho Chi Minh didn't murder a bunch of people, but like Ho Chi Minh's numbers and Henry Kissinger's numbers are kind of,
right. And another thing, back to Apocalypse Now, they shot in the Philippines and they needed to use actual fighters from the Philippine government. And that caused a lot of tension. And like I said, it's all captured on film. Francis Ford Coppola, his wife, directed it. 90 minutes on YouTube. Great, fascinating watch. And Marlon Brando didn't have his lines.
I heard they just filmed him for hours as he just rambled.
Yeah.
They just edited it, and it works perfectly. His character is perfect.
That shows some on-screen presence sometimes is all you need as an actor. Because he pretty much improvised a thing. But seriously, man, that movie gave his heart and soul literally to put it on. And it shows some people really have to kill themselves for their art, I guess.
It's a subtle moment in that movie that's really horrifying. Because obviously, machine gunning villages from a helicopter, like that's supposed to be horrifying.
Yeah, playing Flight of the Valkyrie during that too.
Love the smell of napalm in the morning. But a very subtle, horrifying moment is when they're sailing up the river and it's night and they stop at like this base and they ask like this American soldier, like, who's in charge here? And he just laughs. And it's like,
what?
That's
the point.
And it like imagine being that. Imagine being in that situation. Vietnam was was uniquely. You see, I always wonder, like, was Vietnam uniquely horrific, or was it that we captured it on film, or was?
I think that's a strong emphasis is capturing on film. No, I mean there's a little. I mean there is footage of World War II, but that was the first time you'd have war correspondents literally go in the trenches. Like again, the Ken Burns documentary shows it all. I mean they show there's just horrified footage. Like they showed an NBC reporter getting shot in friendly fire, and he still reported. He's like, "Oh, I got hit," and like again, and the big emphasis. The draft, man. So many people went to that war, and it wasn't their choice, and that caused the tensions on this side. I think it's literally a perfect storm of that, and led to nothing. Just sadly more deaths, but some great stories out of it.
You know the most depressing part of the fact that North Vietnam won? There were papers that have been released from the Vietnamese government where like if we held out for like a few more months, like they would have surrendered.
Oh man.
Well, because at a certain point, if you're killing millions and millions and millions of people, eventually the other side will run out of people. However, I'm not saying we should keep killing millions of people to win the war. I'm not gonna make that claim, but I just find it interesting that it was a race between does North Vietnam run out of people or does America run out of will? And the fact that the war went on for that long and the Vietnamese lost that many people after God knows how many people died fighting the French for independence. God knows how many people fought the Japanese. And you want to know my favorite thing? You know how like every time there's a new terrorist group, it was always like the CIA who trained them?
Yep.
Ho Chi Minh was trained by the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, to fight the Japanese. And because we had relations with Ho Chi Minh, we kind of looked the other way when the French were like, hey, our colony's rebelling. And it's like, well, in fairness, you kind of got wrecked by Hitler and then wrecked by Hirohito, and we're just not interested. But it's something about the guerrilla wars. Like, this is why World War II is fascinating, because the guys who fought the Germans and the Italians and the Vichy French for like 5 minutes and the Italians for 10 minutes, but the guys who fought the Germans in Europe versus the guys who fought the Japanese in the Pacific, the difference. And partially it was because the Japanese Empire was insane. Like 20 naval officers before the war walked in and killed the prime minister of Japan because he wasn't pro-war enough. And they gave them a pretty light sentence. And then to get them free, 300,000 Japanese people signed a petition for their release in their own blood. Japan was hardcore. It was like samurai culture industrialized. And
look at Pearl Harbor. It just shows all those kamikaze pilots just show their savagery.
China took the worst of it. You had SS soldiers in Nanking when the Japanese were taking it, and they were the SS. Like, yeah, we should put these guys on trains to kill them more efficiently. These people were looking at what was going on and were communicating to Berlin saying we cannot have any relations with the Japanese government. They got permission. You'll see clips of Chinese soldiers in German uniforms with German guns fighting the Japanese. Because in Nanking, they don't call it the conquest of Nanking or like the battle. It's called the rape of Nanking. There were competitions between soldiers on who can bayonet the most babies. Like, what went on in the Japanese theater was so horrifying, because I have a friend whose grandpa like fought in Peleliu. I think he was 1st Marines. If he's passed, but if he ever saw anyone of any kind of Asian descent like come into a restaurant, he would freak out.
Yeah,
Like,
you've seen examples of that. I heard stories too. If you've seen Mad Men, there was Roger Sterling didn't want to work with the Honda executives, and it
yeah.
shows your point.
Oh. And I mean, it's like, what does this South Korean guy walking into a restaurant have to do with the Japanese guys you fought? It's not a rational response, but
I guess it took a whole bomb to finally end it, huh?
dude, I don't know if you've seen the Pacific. It was like the Pacific version of Band of
Yeah, the
Brothers.
Band of Brothers. I've seen Band of Brothers, but not the Pacific yet. In fact, I've been thinking about it for a couple months. I gotta start that.
It does a fantastic job of taking you through the mentality of, because like as a normal rational person, would you think that you should just machine gun down unarmed prisoners? No. Like you're halfway through the show and you get mad at characters for not immediately gunning down prisoners because there are too many prisoners who pretend to surrender, JK grenade, blow themselves up, or pick kids up as shields and run at you. Like the Japanese army might have actually been even more evil than the German military in that war. But I think we don't talk about it as much because we had the Nuremberg trials for the Nazis.
Yeah.
And then the ones who escaped Mossad, like just fucking ice picks them in South America. With the exception of Heinrich Himmler, the guy who designed the Holocaust, they dragged his ass to Jerusalem to face trial. Turns out if you design the Holocaust, you do get the death penalty.
Fair enough.
That's fair. But the human experimentation, the hatred towards Japan in Asia that still exists today because of what went on, it's pretty palpable. Like I have friends who in China, they mention how if like someone mentions anything about Japan, like in this region of China, every person just spits. Everyone.
Man, I didn't know that. Wow. I mean, shoot.
I mean, imagine like if here someone was like, yeah, I heard this guy speaking in German, and just everyone goes and continues on with their conversation. Like that's the cultural trauma that must have gone on to create that reaction.
All these years later too.
Oh, there is an issue where China has spent 5,000 years with a strong cultural belief that Han Chinese racial supremacy is there, which has its own issues, especially in modern geopolitics. But what the Japanese did was so horrifying. But you can see a lot of parallels, not in terms of the war crimes. The North Vietnamese obviously committed their fair share of war crimes, but I don't think the level of horror as the Japanese army, but the warfare, very, 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 very similar. You got traps, you got people coming out of the jungle. You never know if you're safe. Like in Europe, it was like,
it's
this
pretty
is the line.
Yeah, there's
the Germans
more
are
open
right.
Fields.
And so.
I think again, it just shows the documentation at the end of the day, which justified it. Like all this stuff I actually didn't know about. Like it's easier to learn more about with the Vietnam War. There's just so much footage out there, and you still have people who can account and tell their stories. But yeah, I think it just shows there's just so much more to learn and be aware of, and it makes sense why this and that and the other. And thank you for pointing that out. And I was just wondering regarding with the other war movies. You ever, besides Apocalypse Now? By the way, you know who has a great cameo in Apocalypse Now is Harrison Ford. He's only in there.
Has a cameo in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, he's only in it for like a minute. I think he gives the assignment to the Martin Sheen character to find Colonel Kurtz. Got it.
Because that part of the movie, I've almost liked because there's so much like like Ride of the Valkyrie and
the regular dialogue scenes can go over your head.
Like spears being thrown at their at their ship.
how about the Dennis Hopper character with some comic relief, just playing a random American photographer, but he has hey, he's right over there. You need it.
Yeah.
Very
But
important composite character.
I loved the use of that because watching the comic relief lose it and no longer be the comic relief helps, because the tone of the movie is like, because it's horrifying the whole time. I mean, it starts
is a
off
scary
with
movie.
Mark being on heroin to cope with the war. So it's not exactly starting in a happy place.
Yeah.
And then, love the smell of napalm in the morning. So the scenery is always horrifying, but how you feel gets darker and darker and darker as you get closer to the heart of darkness, which it's just combining those two of just Heart of Darkness and the Vietnam War was one of the best ideas because the parallels are so real.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are not a lot of Vietnam War movies that are pro Vietnam War. I mean, the closest that probably comes to it is We Were Soldiers.
Yeah, the Mel Gibson one. But still, that still had its dark things to show this war sucked.
Yeah. I mean, they showed a Vietnamese soldier like looking at a picture of of like a woman that he loved and then like sprint with his bayonet, like dodging all these things, and like that 1 minute scene where you're almost cheering for him. And then he gets close to Mel Gibson and Mel Gibson kind of sees out of the corner of his eye and bam. Done.
Yeah, it just shows that they have a life too, that there was a lot of them were forced into this war too, point of that scene. And
war as hell. Dude.
And
another good movie though.
Oh, it was also good from Apocalypse Now. In that final sequence where Kurtz and Martin Sheen, they confront, just beautifully edited, great direction, just the interchanging of cuts, and one of my favorite jump cuts ever. He's about to kill Kurt with the machete, and then they do the cut of the cow getting sacrificed, which PETA complained about. They said that was a real cow getting sacrificed. Not the animal lovers didn't like that, but that was just a perfect parallel. Here's this big fat cow, and he killed him anyway. Just great.
And like trying to cleanse yourself of your own sins of what you've just done by killing the sacrifice. But the sacrifice isn't just the cow. It's also this kernel that's gone off the rails. Those jump cuts at the end, you feel like you've gone crazy.
Yeah.
My mom saw it in theaters, actually. When it came out.
I was actually about to bring that up. Like, imagine the last but not least, you just have to see it in theaters. Especially the scene of Martin going out of the river. It's an iconic scene in the history of cinema. Seeing that on the big screen, I could only imagine.
She said it was not what she expected. I think she was expecting it to be more like Platoon. That's that like movie. The war movie that's tragic and dark, but I don't think she was expecting it to be like that much of a mind fuck. Which
that's where the movies I love the most.
Her and her friend Linda, they just sat there for like an hour, just like not talking, just like looking at the screen. Because it's not a movie I rewatch often because it's
a tough movie to watch.
It's not comfortable. A lot of people don't like the movie because it's very uncomfortable because I can't imagine what it must have been like to be there, given in this like 2-hour movie. I feel myself going crazy. Like, what happens to the people who are in it?
Yeah, right.
There are not a lot of good depictions of what actually happens to the mind and the soul when you're in that. That's one of the things I liked about American Sniper. I think a lot of people got angry at it for being pro-war. I'm like, I don't think American Sniper is a pro-war movie. I mean, the mental health struggles that Chris Kyle goes through in that movie, I don't think it was exactly painting a pretty picture of what war is.
Exactly.
It wasn't painting a pretty picture of who we were killing, but in fairness, like, Al Zarqawi was literal human dog shit. Like, Would he have had power if we hadn't toppled the Saddam regime? Probably not. But like, that wasn't Chris Kyle's decision. Like, he's there.
Yeah, and it just shows that the point of having those close-ups, the disoriented audio tracks, the heartbeat, adding that into your sound mix, because now you're sniping with that, and it's not as simple. Then having like in the opening scene, it's a kid who has the bomb. Like, well, do I have to sacrifice this kid? Yeah, those are the decisions this guy had to make. And this shows the brilliant directing by Clint Eastwood, still rock and rolling there in his 90s, man. And
Clint Eastwood is a very good director. Actually, Mel Gibson is a very good director as well. I mean, he did Hacksaw Ridge, which was tremendous. Which
Apocalypto is crazy, but that's another one of his, ambitious draws. Apocalypto.
I didn't see that one.
It's pretty much about the Mayan culture, ancient Egypt. It's in Latin. It's not exactly a mainstream movie, but it's an interesting take. Then of course we were soldiers.
Isn't exactly mainstream that much anymore. Because he's made some comments, man.
Oh man, and then Passion of the Christ. I mean, that was one of the most violent movies. It has to be up there. Sometimes you're just like, okay, we get it. It sucked for Jesus. We get it, Mel Gibson.
The pain of, I mean, and that's something important. Maybe not the movie, but like what Christ went through, like in Christianity. That revisiting that on Good Friday is important. Because like Easter is supposed to be a celebration of the resurrection, but like Good Friday is supposed to be, hey, remember what Jesus did for you, because this is the same being that when Roman soldiers approach, like, are you Jesus of Nazareth? Like, I am he. And they're literally blown back by the words. Like, he could have wrecked all of these people. But no, he went through that.
Oh yeah. And and the other Vietnam movie I have to bring up, since we pretty much brought up the big ones, Full Metal Jacket. Well, how you feel about when I watched that? When I watched it for the first time in high school, I had no idea what the movie was. I had no background whatsoever. I'm watching it. They're in basic training. I thought, man, this is a comedy. This is hilarious. He's making fun of him.
Funniest movie for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. And then like, oh my God, he keeps playing around. Okay, maybe he's turning around now. Now we're going to see this beautiful story of, this the Gomer Pyle was berated and made fun of, but now he's a changed man. And then bam, one of the darkest scenes ever, killed himself and the drill sergeant, Sergeant Hartman. And then you're like, wow, this was not a comedy. Then he does, obviously the Kubrick look, shows a character who's going insane. And it's insane. And I read about the book. It was based on something that actually happened about a trainee in the Marines. He killed his sergeant, and allegedly his last words is, "I'm proud of you. I literally made you into a killer. But now I'm dead, so I guess it worked out." And then you just,
wow,
it's a movie perfectly in 3 acts. You could clearly tell the 3 acts in it. What do you think about Full Metal Jacket?
I mean, I watched it expecting it to be a comedy, because I had only seen like clips of like, where are you from, Private? I'm from Texas, sir. Like, you only make steers and queers in Texas. I don't see any spurs on your shoes. I'm like, bro, like, what is happening?
Like, do you suck dick, sir? Do you suck dick? No, sir. No, Sergeant.
You look like the kind of guy that would fuck someone in the ass and not give him the goddamn common courtesy of a reach around. I'm like, oh my God, what is this movie? I mean,
and he never acted before.
Hysterical, but to putting that into the context of that movie, this is the process of turning people into killers. And I mean, watching what can come of that with Pyle. And I almost thought the movie would end there, but then them going to Vietnam, and I mean, that had its own horrors that I think get overshadowed by that insane arc with Private Pile of like, a sniper hitting a Marine not to kill him and then keep shooting him not to kill him so that you'll come out to get him so that the sniper can get you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that one. Yeah, that one's disturbing as well. I think it doesn't get as dark as Apocalypse Now.
Yeah,
but Apocalypse Now is one of the greatest movies of all time. So like, well, hard to match.
To talk about changing tones.
Oh, and then they go through that beautiful, horrible sniper scene, and then they start singing like the Mickey Mouse song. It's like,
yeah,
Jesus, and I think there's a message there about how like that becomes your normal when you're in the situations. And it's, Vietnam was horrible. And you see a lot of parallels to that with Afghanistan. I mean, I did my best.
The fall of Kabul and the fall of Saigon. Same exact story. People try to hop on moving helicopters.
Watching the faces of those people trying to flee. So, fun fact. So I went to my cousin's wedding, right? One of my favorite people. I found an awesome bride. But so Lois Hessert, my dad's sister, married Paul Blowy. Paul is the fifth of, I think, 12 or 13 kids.
Well, right in the middle.
I believe it was the second child of the siblings, married an Afghan prince.
Whoa.
Had 3 daughters. I met 2 of them, both of them awesome. 2 of them were born in Afghanistan, but the family had to flee because I believe it was when the communists took over.
In the late 70s.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tragic story because it was, I mean, like in the early 70s, you could go to like a nightclub in Kabul.
Have you seen those pictures they had? Kabul in 1971. It looked like just 3 women in a college campus, and then we know what happened.
It's very Western.
Exactly. Very
Western.
Western.
It was Iran before the revolution. Iran was very, very normal. But the same way the CIA broke Iran, the KGB helped break Afghanistan, installed a communist government. And that communist government was so horrifyingly evil that the Soviet Union goes in to step in to remove that government. And then the CIA is like, hey, what if we train these guys to fight the Soviets, who we then end up fighting less than 10 years later in the form of the Taliban.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm furious about what happened in Afghanistan for so many reasons. First off, the fact that the Afghan government collapsed that quickly means that all of these generals saying, we got this, we're nation building, they're either insanely incompetent and are some of the worst people at their jobs in human history, which I don't think you would get the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff at that level, or they were fucking lying to us for 20 years.
Oh.
For 20 years. How many people died? And then
the rest of peace to those Marines who we lost during the regime change.
God, that was awful.
That's war starting stuff.
I'm trying to be able to express my anger without like really freaking out. Leaving people in Afghanistan who supported the United States against the Taliban regime with guarantees that we would help them and remove them from the country if they ever needed it, and then fucking leaving them there. The Taliban, I don't know what happened to them. I'm assuming they're all dead because there were people getting texts from the Taliban with their address, like, we know where you are, while they're outside Kabul and Kabul's falling. And watching people try to hold on to planes to get out of that country. And then, Texas abortion law is happening at the same time. I don't agree with it, but people making cartoons of like women in Afghanistan and being like, at least I don't live in Texas. Fuck you. Fuck you. If you think that's at all remotely appropriate. I don't care what your political beliefs are. Fuck you. To look at the plight and the horror that these people have to go through, either due to the Taliban or the CIA or Bush or Obama or Trump or what fucking ever. Who gives a shit whose fault this is? Looking at what these people are going through and comparing it to almost any experience that anyone has in the United States is so asinine that you are either a soulless, evil fuck who has no true morality outside of making sure your party wins, and you're using the plight of these people for your own edgy political gain, or you're a complete and utter moron, and your participation in the public square does every human being on the planet a complete and utter disservice. Now that I've put that to rest, the UN has a treaty on human rights of guarantees that every single nation in the United Nations ratified, I believe in either 47 or 48. The Taliban government is in complete and utter violation of it, as are so many other governments. Who enforces it? Like, why do we just let this happen? Why? I don't get it. Is it because there's no oil in Afghanistan? Like, I don't fucking...
Could be we talk about that price again. Can you get a profit from it? It might be that simple. And we've seen examples, people will literally choose money over life. And I agree with you, Will. Anybody who was ignorant enough to deal with people's lives changing, all those children who will not have a future from it, they can go to hell. They really can. And it just shows how privileged and how spoiled a lot of Americans are. And I mean, anybody who'd be ignorant to think that way.
Yeah.
And I really wish we could just be a movement to change how people act and feel. We just can't. People are still going to stay that awful. But all we can do is just lead by example. And even if that
I will
changes
also never write or check a box next to Joe Biden on any ballot, not because of the botched withdrawal. I'm not convinced there's a way to leave that situation and not have it be a shit show.
Yeah.
It was being fucking lied to my face. And having the United States government investigating volunteers going to Afghanistan to get people out rather than trying to figure out how to get people out while being lied to that we didn't leave anyone behind. Dead to me. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go. Fuck this administration. And then in response to ISIS-K, which apparently they have more variants than COVID now, ISIS-K bombing our Marines, who were in a crowd. I don't know if you saw the video of what was going on right before. U.S. Marines are walking through this dense crowd of people giving water to children. That is where the bombing happened. So I think Yeah, I think it's either 60 people total or 60 Afghans in addition to the, and who even knows what the numbers are? You can't even figure out how many people we left behind, let alone how many people died. So we drone striked the guy who did it. Did we kill 7 children doing it? Yes, but at least we got the guy. And then all these like independent journalists are like, I'm pretty sure that was a USAID worker. And the administration, like, this is misinformation. This is Russia, blah, blah, blah. You know, of course, they quietly admit that that was a USAID worker. And those 7 kids were his. Oh, and that woman that died, I think it was his wife or his mom or something. But yeah, we just like obliterated a family of a USAID worker to have a gotcha bin Laden moment that wasn't even real. I hate these fucking people. Whoever's in charge. And I don't think Joe Biden's in charge of the country. Like, it's obvious. Like, the fact that there is a debate going on right now as to whether or not this man shit himself in the Vatican. Would we have this conversation?
How about
Donald Trump, Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush? If someone said Barack Obama shit himself in the Vatican, we'd all be like, there's no way that's true. But when someone says about Joe Biden, the fact that we're like, maybe he did. He's not fit to run the United States of America. He can't finish his sentence. Like, is this the best we can do? Joe Biden and Donald Trump? What is happening?
From the generational people, from people of so many generations just choosing not to run, to so much political influence from lobbyists to corporations. And again, everyone having a price. You can never get an honest man, woman, or person to have that job. And I guess that kind of turns some people off. And then there's some people who want to take it. And whoever the very first millennial president will be, and I hope sooner rather than later, I really do. No offense to the boomers, but I think it's time for things to change. And, you know, they lived in a world where they got their entertainment from cable, from VHSs and milk truck cartons. And anyways, I thought it sounded cool in my head.
Change and bombing Vietnam. They had their things, you know.
Exactly. Like the point I'm saying is they had a really, really different world when they became of age compared to us. And we need, in my opinion, a younger generation who understands these new trends to attempt to change this world. I mean, the other example is, like, to bring it to sports, the NFL, you see more younger coaches. You have coaches now in their late 30s and 40s who are leading these teams because the game has changed so much that they understand how to facilitate it. And the older coaches are a thing of the past. That should be what it's like for our new world leaders in the whole world, not only the United States. We need a younger generation who grew up into this hugely technologically influenced world to make these decisions now. And whether it's some people who are afraid to do it, some people don't want to be influenced by because at the end of the day, you're going to have to go through these corporations one way or the other, unless you're Ross Perot and you're just filthy rich already. And maybe that is the case. We are seeing so many.
The actual move to do.
Yeah, they might have to.
Like, I mean, imagine if Ross Perot took over an existing party the same way Trump did. He would have dominated. Dominated.
Like they said, he would have won if they always said Bush would have won if there was no Perot. But again, like you said,
yeah,
they would have dominated. But Trump did go to, we'll talk about, you could talk about Trump for days, but he became a Republican. That was easier for him to win the game of the election, to choose the secure Republican Party at the time. And like you said, that might have to be the move now. Someone independent just has to have so much financial backing that they can't be influenced by these corporations to get elected. And honestly, we're seeing a world that might be possible. Maybe it's you, Will, if you want it.
I'm happy to fund the guy. I'm not sure if I'm happy to be the guy. Because here's the thing. So this is how I cope with what I see.
Yeah.
I hate the system. It's so utterly broken. And then you have all these people dedicated to fighting to make the system better, while you have all these people fighting to keep it terrible. All right. So like I'll look at climate change, right? And what is the government really doing about it? Fuck all. So I'm gonna start a carbon capture company. Because at a certain, if we can get to the gigaton scale of CO2 removal, like mid 2030s, we are buying the world more time. I'm watching social media becoming more and more authoritarian, and the left wing has to realize this. There are people on the far left also getting canceled from the internet. If you are not center left, you are at risk of being removed from social media. The government is clamping down. They are coming for everyone that doesn't fit their state. So instead of just like being angry that Facebook and Google and these companies are stupid, why not just make competing things? Because I think we spend so much time.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah. Like, we're always like, oh, democracy, this, democracy, that. Fuck democracy. Every douchebag that cuts you off on the road, every person that comments on your video to kill yourself, every horrible teacher and high school bully and cop that made you fear for your life, all of these people, you know what they all are? Voters. These people vote for people. So if you want to change the world through politics and that's your prerogative, good for you. I have zero faith in anyone's ability to truly do that. The system seems to destroy people who want to make a genuine change. So why not you just make maximum impact outside of the system? Because if you have enough people that do that, the system has to reconcile. If I had more time right now, so if someone is really smart and has time, go and do this. I would come up with a plan to actually end world hunger for $6 billion and send it to Elon. Like, hey, why don't we do this? The UN is obviously useless. The UN has China on its human rights committee. Like, they're not a real organization. Fuck the UN. They can't stop raping children when they're trying to give them food. Forget about these people. They're all evil. They're all politicians. What can you do? Imagine if 10 million of us all decided to feed 10 people.
You'd feed millions of people simply from that. The littlest change. Well, you're at the end of the day, and what we have seen entrepreneurs do and people who are of success, they saw a problem and they took the initiative to change it. They picked up the phone to do it. They didn't go on Facebook and comment, fuck you, stupid, bitch, all that.
You're a racist. You're a libtard. Oh,
they made the actual change.
So much
yeah, like
comment.
Ted Sarandos of Netflix. He got a big fee at Blockbuster. He returned a late tape. He said, fuck this. I'm going to do my own video service. That started out in DVDs. They obviously went to the trend to go online, and Netflix is one of the most influential companies in the world and just showing great content on content.
That's the point. How dare you say Netflix shows great content? Do you know that they let Dave Chappelle tell jokes, Matt? How dare you?
Thank God that story lost some legs. And shouts to Dave Chappelle not falling down. And at the end of the day, he offered to have a conversation with these people, and hence why he did it, to come to it. And Netflix, man, I saw that special. I didn't find it problematic, and it's a comedian doing a bit. I don't think he actually felt that way. And he put himself out there, okay, to the trans community, who, of course, they don't deserve any shit from people. And, they have their own obstacles to overcome, and we support them. But he was just doing a bit, and he's willing to talk about it. And we have to have that
Yeah.
conversation, take it up for him. He's putting himself in a vulnerable position where you could call him out on everything, but he's just doing a bit, but he's at least being responsible for what he was saying.
And he's
Not a lot
also
of people
talking
doing
about
that.
his experience in him growing through this friendship that he's had with a good friend of his who was trans. And I say was because when this friend defended Chappelle, people bullied this person. Trans activists bullied this trans person into suicide. And that seems to leave the conversation. And it's no one's willing to say that a lot of modern activism is fucking cancer. You're not Martin Luther King a lot of the time. You're just a shithead who's angry at the world. And have you ever seen Faulty Towers? It's kind of like the spiritual successor to Monty Python.
No, but I love Monty Python. That sounds up my alley.
I will send you this clip. It's this guy who's like, a lot of people keep saying extremism is bad, but they never look at the positive attributes of extremism. For example, if you're a miserable, mean person, you now have people you can blame all the world's problems on. And you can say, I would be nice and normal and rational if not for these people. If you're on the left, you can be angry at businessmen and corporations and like this, that, and of course, moderates. And if you're on the right and you're an extremist, you can be angry at the minorities and the unions and the communists and the socialists and most importantly, the moderates. And it's so funny of just, people who are angry and vitriolic and just not good people weaponize activism as a way to harm others, which distracts giving these people a voice. Because they're terrified of maybe if we tell this part of the activist community that they're fucking crazy and need psychological help, then we'll look like we're transphobic, racist, misogynistic, and not working on the actual societal barriers to the trans community and the rest of, I don't hate gay people. I just can't keep up with the letters.
The LGBTQIA plus community.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We've just reordered the alphabet, but there are genuine barriers. Like there are donors going to Pete Buttigieg right now for a 2024 run. People are like, oh, I think he's going to be next president. I'm like, I genuinely don't. Because there's still enough of this country backwards enough that they're like, I will never vote for a gay man. I'm like, well, you vote for a war criminal. Why not a gay man? There's things that need help, but a large part of the activists that we give the microphone to are killing the very movements that they're going forth. And I think one of the reasons why corporate media keeps giving the crazies the microphone is to help discredit what we're talking about. You don't have to look at the horrendous life expectancy of trans people if, number one, we look at the only solution is to cancel Chappelle, and then the people we give microphones to are fucking insane. Like, well, we need to let, trans people represent a trans community. Agreed. Why did you pick, the most insane handful of people to represent a community? And it's often, do you notice how it's always, white women who are, speaking for the Black community and the Hispanic community and the trans community and the gay community? It's like white cisgendered heterosexual women. I'm like, wait a minute. But
there's a parallel here, huh?
I'm confused. I thought we were supposed to, they're like, we must give more voice to the trans community. I'm like, then bitch, put down the microphone. What are you doing? Give the mic to
exactly.
someone in the community.
Let these people from these different backgrounds fight for their stories. Of course, you could support them, but also let them lead the charge most of all.
Yeah, and it's just there's so much bullshit in a lot of modern activism. Like, if they just admitted, right? Hey, during BLM, there was looting and spikes in violent crime. However, if you look at the math, it was a very, very, very small percentage of any BLM protest went to that. The overwhelming majority were peaceful. And in fact, a lot of those peaceful protests, moments where you see violence is because the police attacked the protests unwarranted. Like I freaking watched it, people playing violins in memory of, I forget the boy's name, who was fucking killed by police in Colorado, who loved the violin, and people were playing violins in his honor, and police show up in riot gear and start shooting fucking tear gas. I'm like, what's going on? But because activists are unable or unwilling to admit, hey, like 1% of the time we looted some shit, they instead come out and we're like, looting is justified. I'm like, good, you just lost most of the country. You just lost most of the support because we're now going to just
let's destroy these local businesses.
Marxist argument that like property isn't real. I'm like, for fuck's sake, we're not here to talk about private property. We're here to talk about the fact that young Black men are murdered without consequence. That is a worthy conversation of having. But, it's like trying to solve 4,000 issues at once. And they just can't fucking solve anything because they can't just pay attention to something. Like, maybe end qualified immunity for police departments. Like, stop fucking talking about whether or not a Macy's should exist in a Marxist utopia. Like, just leave Macy's alone for half a fucking second. Could we talk about killing people without consequence? Or the fact that the police steal more money than white collar and blue collar crime combined. I don't know if regular like mugging is called blue collar crime, but I'm just going to call it that. It's like, you work with your hands, you got to use the gun, not the computer to steal your money. But the police can take any of your assets if you are suspected of being involved with drugs, and you have to go to court to prove that you weren't. And more assets are taken from Americans every single year than are stolen by, because we think mugging is where most of the crime is. Mugging, white collar crime, police departments. So the fact that we allow that and we're just all, but no, we have to have debates about fucking Chappelle. Like, can we just,
there's bigger problems here, people.
Can we get these people health care? Like, can we?
When you put it that way, when people are when a small amount of people with a large voice are more upset about a comedian doing a comedy bit than any other crimes and hypocrisy and bullshit that's taking place, it's exactly why we are never going to come up with a compromise, and we'll just keep debating until somebody gives. But until then, just lead by example, live our best lives, and then maybe we will find a compromise. And I guess from this epic conversation, well, just one last thing is, just what are some great comedy movies you've seen recently besides it? Talk about the Monty Python's classic British comedians, geniuses. Okay. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know if you've seen that or the new season.
I've seen the new season. I've seen like the first 3 seasons. I got to continue it.
Oh.
But it's amazing.
Larry David, the very best comedy show, hands down. For any of the basic people who say The Office or other ones, he's just like, especially, I won't give anything away. The new season has just nuanced things that have nothing to do with the climate. He could have literally shot these comedy bits back in the 60s or the 40s or the 50s, and it's still hilarious. Like, Larry David is a special gem. Who's up here? Like, I mean, it's just.
And the song is perfect. Boom, boom, boom. Da, 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 da. Dude, it's iconic. I mean, some of my favorite all-time comedy shows, like Arrested Development, Archer, those are up there. I love watching Archer because I'm like, wow, that would definitely be me if I made slightly different life choices.
It's John Benjamin. I love this great voice actor.
Oh, and it's funny how much more Archer he is than Bob, but like in terms of who he is as a person, but Archer's hysterical. Dude, and both of them with Jessica Walter playing the same exact character in Arrested Development and Archer. Rest in peace. Absolute legendary actress.
Absolutely.
Those are hysterical comedy movies. They don't really make a lot of funny movies anymore.
No, I think that is a result of the theaters. At the time, the theaters being difficult. Like you've seen studios sell off their big comedies to a Hulu and a Netflix, like Palm Springs that came out last summer with Andy Samberg. Pretty much Groundhog Day, a new take on that. That was supposed to be a theater film, sold it to Hulu, and they distributed it that way. I think, again, that they just find these action thrillers, MCU, Star Wars more profitable in the theater.
And MCU movies are pretty, like Thor Ragnarok was a comedy.
Oh yeah, that's how they do that. Civil War was a political thriller,
Yeah,
alienating it that
interwoven. Way. Black Panther is a deep look at racial injustice through the boss fight in an underground railroad. Come on,
yeah, but you're right.
Done movie, but like Thor Ragnarok was. You can see scenes where they're trying not to laugh, and you shouldn't edit it out because the movie is just so much fun to watch. I mean, comedies weren't making that much money in theaters anyway. And then you add a pandemic, like why wouldn't you just have them go straight to Netflix? I mean, Netflix is pumping out comedies.
Yeah, HBO Max is too, Prime is.
Yeah. Well, because at the end of the day, they know that eventually all of these companies are going to get their shit together and have their own streaming service. So they need to maximize their own content. So when the rights to the shows they've been showing forever, and you can't watch How I Met Your Mother anymore on Hulu because it's gone to CBS's streaming service, and you can't watch old Survivor reruns on Netflix anymore.
Went to CBS, Paramount Plus.
Yep,
there's the Viacom one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Viacom. I see them trying, but they're doing a terrible job. So eventually, the only shows that are on Netflix will be Netflix shows and Netflix movies.
Which is still a great catalog, but it's funny how they build off that, but now they're just doing their own. Though they did put the Seinfeld catalog on Netflix for now.
I mean, Netflix has been making comedies for a while, hit or miss.
Funny. The comedy special. Netflix is the king there. One thing I read. So SNL cast members. We could debate is it still funny or whatever. Okay, that's long-winded, but
they have funny bits.
Yes, absolutely. And viral moments.
Funny.
Yeah.
Weekend Update is fucking hysterical.
The rest of the show, Michael Che are the combo. Best combo ever.
God, dude. When it's obvious they've written each other's lines to mess with each other.
Oh my God. That's the best moment of the year every time. Usually do it around Christmas.
And Michael Che writes some horribly racist thing. He has to read it. And he's just putting his head down on the desk. Oh my God. They're perfect together as well. And
the reason why I brought it up, I read this article. They had 18 cast members, all but one came back this year, and they added 4 new cast members. They say, why is that? Well, the reason why people aren't leaving SNL, you have a secure job. they can't go and have a movie career like a Will Ferrell did or Adam Sandler, Eddie Murphy. It's not viable. I mean, of course, you have gems like Jason Sudeikis is Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Bill Hader is Barry on HBO. But like a Kristen
Fallon
Wiig
is Jimmy Fallon.
exactly. Jimmy Fallon
Jimmy
killed
Fallon.
The Tonight Show. But like a Kristen Wiig, she had,
yeah.
excuse me.
She's
Bridesmaids, awesome. She is awesome. You thought like, damn, she's just gonna have a great film career, but it just didn't pan out that way for now. I mean, of course, there's good stuff out there, but you know, like that's an example of might as well keep a secure job while stay relevant in the conversation than try to risk, you know, a movie comedy career that just isn't there right now. And maybe it comes back in this decade. I don't know, but not since like those Apatow films. It really is that the Hangover, another one, not Apatow film, but that was like the last true original theater hit comedy, The Hangover, and that came out in 2009. So I think it just shows people like consuming comedy more through the streaming service now. But you know, and
or
like
through action movies. I mean, like Chris Pratt had to get jacked to be in a
perfect example.
Movie, you know,
all right. If I'm gonna get work, I gotta get jacked.
I mean, he was funny in Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, dude, because it's like, well, I wonder if Chris Pratt is funny in real life, and you watch like Parks and Rec like bloopers.
It's like this is like this is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh my God! Have you ever seen the one where they were talking about like comeback stories?
I haven't seen that one yet.
And it was someone, it was like a blooper where I think it was just like an ad. They were just improvising, and then it's like, yeah, no, we love a good comeback video, and they're like naming like ones, and then he's like, you know, Kim Kardashian, you know, she had a comeback video. Like, what do you mean? Like, well, you know, she got like cum on her back, and and everyone just collapses, and they're like, Chris, what are you saying? Oh, he's hysterical. He's one of the funniest people. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of, because everything's sarcastic now. So
that's big too. That's a good point.
Like watching like the quips that like Avengers are giving each other as they're fighting is almost more meaningful than, I don't know, because there's like, it's hard to build plots for comedy movies that have like deep meaning. Like I think Dodgeball did a really good job. Dodgeball is an amazing comedy movie.
The Average Joes, huh? Why them beating the big corporate?
My favorite thing, I didn't realize this, is that like the hot accountant that ends up playing for Average Joes that like Ben Stiller is a giant creep to. I didn't realize that's Ben Stiller's wife. So he's like being creep to his own wife, but that makes the movie even funnier.
Irony. Vince Vaughn was great. He's now a cast member on Curb, on the last season, the new one too. So you know, what a great win,
dude. Okay, you've sold me, because Vince Vaughn has always crushed it in comedy roles because he's the perfect, like, everything around me is ridiculous.
Yeah, every man. Pretty much like everyone's seen a Vince Vaughn type in their life.
Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's his role always, but he always does an amazing job. Jason Bateman's always hysterical, though he does kill it in dramas. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot of the comedy are things that Hollywood is unwilling to touch. Like, could you imagine someone attempting to make like a Mel Brooks movie right now, like Blazing Saddles,
with the specific context that hasn't aged well? No, it's impossible.
But I think it ages perfectly because the movie is.
Oh, of course. I'm saying like people would be offended by the movie easily. Like that's what I meant by not age well. It's of course a great funny movie, but I'm saying again the woke culture. Let's just say the woke culture would try to cancel if we try to do that type of style. But
which is obnoxious because the movie exists to make fun of racism. Like it is mocking racists the entire time, that there are these stupid backwards people that are going to shoot themselves in the foot because they can't figure out that black and white people are not like these two totally different species. But you couldn't make Airplane.
Nope.
Hell, I don't even think you
name
can
any
make
comedy.
dodgeball. You know,
You couldn't do Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You couldn't do
no. That's
yeah,
no. You could not make
can't
that.
do Animal House.
No.
Any National Lampoon, type of stuff from back then. I mean, one of the most iconic pictures is the dog getting a pistol to his head. I don't know if you ever seen that National Lampoon cover, but like that's the point. Though it obviously aged well, it's still funny, but it's just people would be easily offended, and we'll go watch something else.
What people need to understand about comedy that pisses me off?
What's that?
There are a lot of people who try to cancel things that are offensive who aren't part of the group that's being offended, but in their eyes. But it's important to realize that laughter is sometimes the only way for us as humans to process horrible shit going on. Like, I think like suicide jokes are hysterical. Like if someone makes a joke, I find it hysterical because as a teenager struggling with suicidal thoughts, my ability to process my experience is much easier through laughter. Now, some people who have experienced that will harm them. Okay, great. Turn off the fucking special. Because there are other people who use laughter as a healing mechanism, as an ability to understand their own experience more truly, to hear their own thoughts expressed clearly in a way that's funny, to hear new ideas that you would never be able to hear outside of laughter. That's why I think George Carlin's the king, because he could just say the most intense stuff without, like his bit on changing words. Like, back in World War II, they called it shell shock. Shell shock. Doesn't that spook you? But then in Korea, they realized, well, we got to tone this down a little bit. We'll call it combat fatigue. You see, we got some more syllables. We put some space in. And then by the time we got to Vietnam, it was post-traumatic stress disorder. And they managed to sap all meaning from it. So when these guys came back from Vietnam, we didn't have to do shit for them. And we didn't give those guys the help that they needed. So here he is. And Jon Stewart is probably our modern George Carlin, especially with his new show, which is tremendous. And he is
on Apple TV.
Apple he's Plus, one of the best journalists of all time, because he used to, like, someone would come on, like Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, would come on and they'd share some jokes. And I've only ever saw him on The Daily Show really hit someone hard once, who was the Pakistani ambassador, trying to get him to explain, hey, so remember when we told the IDF that we were going after bin Laden and he disappeared for 10 years? And remember when we just killed him last week and he was like a block and a half away from your fucking military academy? What's going on? But other than that, it was always jokes. But now he's sitting there, grilling people. And it's not even funny. It's very uncomfortable. But it's something that apparently no journalist for CNN, MSNBC, Fox, any of these groups has the balls to do. And he retired. He went to go take care of puppies. We had to bring this poor man back into this hellhole of an earth. Because you fucking people can't do your job as a journalist and call powerful people out. And we called out powerful Republicans. Well, what about the powerful Democrats? Can there just be one person who calls powerful people out on their bullshit, regardless of party? We couldn't find anyone new to do that because everyone lost their balls. Colbert is now a stooge. So we're going to resurrect Jon Stewart because apparently no one else in America can do this job. And by God, is he doing an amazing, amazing job. The problem with Jon Stewart is John Oliver doesn't do it anymore. He used to. He's he's a hack. He's just, well, according to what my DNC masters told me to do. And then you have, and not to say that there aren't Republican versions of that, but they don't get TV shows, they get YouTube shows. So, you got to go on Louder with Crowder to be able to do it. And then every other episode gets demonetized. So there are Republican versions of that. They just have a lot less money because media has always had a left bias. And also, John Oliver is going to get canceled overnight, but what if Louder with Crowder could just go like that off of YouTube? I think Trevor Noah is getting there, though. I will give him credit.
People love Trevor Noah.
With Dan Crenshaw. And I think Dan Crenshaw is, because I find most Republicans completely unreasonable. As much as I hate the Democratic Party, I just want to be clear. I hate everyone. Dan Crenshaw is an incredibly reasonable human being. I do not agree with him.
Oh, yeah. Awesome service, too.
Oh, my gosh. Dude, I bought his book. I read the first page, and it was just about him being in a firefight for 9 hours. A bomb goes off. His face feels kind of weird. He goes back to fighting, passes out, wakes up 2 weeks later in Germany, and he has half of his eyesight in one eye and the other eye is non-functioning. So he, intense dude, Navy SEAL lieutenant, served his country. But him and Trevor Noah had an incredibly reasonable conversation. And watching that gave me so much hope, because there are very few people who would do that. Jon Stewart tried to talk about the Wuhan lab on Colbert, and Colbert looked like he was going to throw up.
Uh-oh, here comes Mr. CBS.
Because the network, even though it has just been admitted that crazy conspiracy theory that I've been peddling since April of last year, that the NIH, through EcoHealth Alliance, funded gain-of-function research to increase the transmission of bat coronaviruses, within the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That was dismissed as a conspiracy theory. That was just admitted to be true. They are claiming that COVID-19 is too genetically different from the viruses they were working on to be the same. But I just want to say to all the people who said it was an unhinged conspiracy theory and I was spreading racism, fuck you. And because you're actually dumb enough to listen to what the TV tells you, to believe that somehow the United States government being corrupt, along with the Chinese government, that is racist. But that Chinese people are weird and sometimes they just eat weird stuff and it makes new illnesses, that's not racist. What? That sounds kind of racist. What we were told kind of sounded like we were using racial stereotypes about Chinese to sell this. But so long story short, Anthony Fauci should be in jail. But Jon Stewart was right. Jon Stewart was right. And he was the only one who had the balls to say it. Because it's not about politics. That's letting fucking kids play around with nuclear weapons. We can't be doing gain-of-function research. Anthony Fauci's a fucking idiot because he thinks that gain-of-function is the right thing. Buddy, it's so obviously a bad idea. And you lied to the United States Congress about it. But so Jon Stewart is one of the few people with the actual journalistic integrity, but it seems like Trevor Noah is either, because when he started, he annoyed me. So I didn't listen. And I just started re-listening to him because my mom loves Trevor Noah and I respect my mom's opinion. So I'm all right, Mom, I'll give this guy a chance. Oh, a Dan Crenshaw, Trevor Noah conversation? That'll be weird. Those are two very different people. Let's listen. He's good. He's one of the good guys, because that's what we need at this point. Is we need good guys on every side of every party who don't lie to advance their agenda. I am sick of left versus right. It needs to be truth versus lies, because the only people being protected by these lies, they say it's to protect us, but it's to protect them. Like, we pretend like these guys aren't all best friends behind closed doors. Of course they are. Powerful people always are.
That's why they're the 1%.
My favorite meme about this is it's the Bushes, the Obamas, and the Clintons all laughing together. And it says, maybe the real inside job was the friends we made along the way.
Oh, man.
We need people like that. The Jon Stewarts and the Trevor Noahs, and hell, even the Dan Crenshaws, but like most politicians aren't good. Just people who can have a reasonable conversation. And we need to replace the Don Lemons and the Joy Reids and the Tucker Carlsons and I want to name more Fox people, but I literally don't even know who's on Fox anymore. Because it seems like Fox makes all its money off Tucker, and they use that money to stay on for 24 hours. But
he make people, his audience is big. They like that guy. But hey, I think you made a strong point at the end of the day. Have the integrity to change. For lack of a better word, have the balls to do something different. Go make the change at the end of the day, no matter who you are. Challenge the things you don't understand, ask questions, and have a real conversation to make these changes once and for all. Well, this was an epic from every second on. I gotta say, man, I hope that we helped you get through the at least part of your day before your big night. And
it's not a big night for me. I just have to stand there. I really don't do much. I've already contributed everything I can.
Exactly.
A solid 7 to 8 minute contribution, and then boom, men are fucking useless compared to women, man. I'm telling you, women are the superior gender.
You're right. Absolutely right. So, but congratulations to your family, Will. We're sending best wishes that everything goes well, and that you have a nice, new, healthy addition to your family and a beautiful soul. Can we ask, do you know the gender yet?
Yeah, so we're having another girl.
All right.
And we know her name is going to be Genevieve. So it'll be
Genevieve.
Josephine and Genevieve, or Josie and Evie for the nicknames.
Wow, Will, what a beautiful day. Congratulations to you and your wife, especially how strong your wife is for this. And like I said, this is a beautiful day, and excited to hear the good news later on. And just thank you for giving us some time anticipating this day. So this was really epic. This was everything I wanted in a productive conversation. And Will, once everything's settled, even if it is a while from now, once you get things under control with your family, and Trevor Noah and Jon Stewart fail and aren't defending things for us, but we know they will. Bottom line, once things calm down, I'd love to have you on again. And man, this is awesome. Will, thank you for everything. And is there anything you want us to tell us one last time before we're out?
Whether or not you want kids, and whether or not you even like kids, if you feel like giving up on making the world better, go look at a baby. And I think you'll change your mind.
What a way to end it. That's the great Will Hessert, everybody. Man, I love you. I can't wait to see you again. And just thank you so much for the great content, as always. Thank 100%. You so much, Will Hessert. All right. We'll see you soon. Have a great day. Enjoy what's about to take place. You're the man, Will. You're the man, Will.
I'll catch you, man.
See ya.